I consider it an education. I mean, we set out to educate San Antonio, but we ended up educating ourselves too. But one of the things, like I said, that happened was the Los Number Two dinners. So that kind of had their first performance at SAMOMA. And so after SAMOMA faded, Norman and I continued with the Los Number Two dinners for the next 13 years. We played rock and roll all over the state from like 1979, November 1979 to like November 1992. So we went, and then Norman and I have continued music. We have a band called El Even. We're on YouTube. If you're interested, go check it out. A band that I played in during SAMOMA times called Ultra, a heavy metal band, now has started to get airtime on YouTube, and we've got a CD out now, and so I'm continuing the musical. But as far as my profession, it's artist/service industry. If you people out there know what I mean. Okay. I know Gary that did the piece right across the street knows what I'm talking about, because I hear he's a bag
Gary
man.
Sweeney.
Yeah, he's a bag man at the airport. Like some of us, I never have tried to make a career out of art. I've always had a job, where I made money so that I can keep my art free and I don't have to, suffer the consequences of other people's demand upon my art. I want to keep it free. So I'm still involved in art, still involved in music.
And Norman, what did you take away from SAMOMA, and what have you been doing since?
Well, as everybody knows, I mean, a few of you know that every time I had a chance, I would always talk about SAMOMA. It was in my bios, it was like that. And I would tell people, they go, oh yeah, really? And then, so finally, then David, this happens, and this was years ago that we put that show together. Because I was starting to freak out, in a sense, because so many of the people that showed at SAMOMA have died, have passed, are no longer with us. Alvin Martin, Dan Withers, and Steve Reynolds, Charles Francis Winans, who's in the multiple, started the first head shop in San Antonio. Michael Gonzalez. So this is the multiple. I have more slides. I have photographs. I was a teacher, and Joanne was going to Incarnate Word on a scholarship and working, in the service industry. But so the whole time that we were doing SAMOMA, I was paying for the slide film, the photo film, the film for 8mm. It was, it was like, I remember exactly how much it was. So I have all of that, and some of it's getting ruined, and some of it was getting ruined. So in the last few years, I've been putting it all together, and we have actual artworks that were donated to us. Carlos Rene Perez gave his entire photography of, and he's going to have a show at the Leica Gallery in New York along with Maggie Stever, and that's a prestigious gallery up there. And he's shown in there before on 2 other occasions. Well, he gave us. I have a box of his hand-developed beautiful prints that showed at SAMOMA. We have other things. I have Harder prints, Jim Harder prints. So I was just really, I couldn't believe that no one was interested. No one would go, and truly, we need money to, a grant type of a thing to really do it right. I'd love to see it into a book. I would love to see, and all the way back to the avant-garde, all the way back to the other
Brass Ring, Julian Onderdonck's group, the first avant-garde group in San Antonio. They were behind because they were doing post-impressionism, but in 1912 in San Antonio, that was pretty advanced. And one of these days, somebody, maybe us, somebody's going to write that history of modernism in San Antonio, because we've got a rich history. There's a lot of people, Amy Freeman Lee for openers,
I've continued to make art throughout the whole, but in the back of my head, I really wanted to make music and beautiful music, and just because it's not a huge hit we did it. Don and I have done it. I've done a symphony, an electronic symphony. So I pursued music, but I had shows. We had group shows. Don and Robert Gonzalez. Roberto Gonzalez needs to be in the San Antonio Museum of Art. He is an amazing, true, real artist. So I haven't stopped, and I have new things, and we had the SAMOMA Lives Lives during the summer, and we had information there. And then we had our new work and old work, and so I mean it's an ongoing. My life is making art and music, and writing. Also, I also write. So these things are. I was doing it when I was 11 years old, and put in the newspaper with the namesake of the elementary school with the George Washington and Abraham Lincoln portraits that I drew, and I'm Uncle Sam, and my mother made my vest, and I was Uncle Sam. I had that little beard. I was in the play. I mean, from there, I knew that I was going to be making art, and to walk into
You knew he was
SAMA,
going to be Uncle Sam.
to walk into SAMA the first time was kind of triumphant in the sense that there wasn't this, there wasn't Blue Star, there wasn't back then there, and then the other galleries that came after, there was the Artist Alliance Gallery, which was city run kind of a thing, and we showed there. Yeah. So we always believed that the artists at San Antonio. Now look at it. Tonight is the first Friday, and it's everywhere.
What about the artists of San Antonio? You finished your sentence. You were saying something about the artists of San Antonio.
With that we artists, the food, the music, the terrain, it all affects the way you make art. And some people go away and come back, but say, for instance, John Philip Santos goes to New York and he lives there many, many years. But the whole time he says that, he's writing the book about his life here. And he came back to do that. Lovely books, 2 of them. So when you have San Antonio in your blood, it's different than Austin. It's different than Houston. It's different than El Paso. It's different. It's different than L.A. I mean, the San Antonio, if you look at the embracing and the kissing and the hugging of artists in San Antonio, it's because that's who we are.
Well, it goes back to what Al Martin wrote.
Well, if I may finish this sentence.
Yes, you finish it.
San Antonio, the artists here in town are just as powerful and just as potent as they are anywhere else in the world.
Hear, hear.
And now that things have opened up and we're believing in ourselves, man, we got the world in front of us,
So let's turn the house lights up then and open it up to the audience for questioning. And we have a microphone, so it'll be passed to you. House lights up so we can see the audience, please. Good. Okay. So someone have a question for any of these gentlemen?
Boxers or briefs.
Okay, we have a little, you want to pass the mic over here. Wait for the mic because we're recording, videotaping, all of that. It's coming.
I looked up $15,000 in 1977 dollars. It's now $57,000.
Yes.
And the thing of it is, we were poor. We really were. And, but it's just like, when you want to do something, you seem to find a way, to get the money that you need to do what you...
My rent at that time was $110.
Mine was $135 in Austin.
Yeah.
Another question?
Oh, come on.
Nobody has a
You know
question.
you want to add. There's one.
Okay, we have one way in the back. We'll pass the microphone.
SAMOMA was a group effort, and thanks to everybody that was there, went there.
Okay, we have a question now.
So, Don, I know that you read a lot, and I was wondering, how has that influenced your art?
Well, for openers, since 1992, I've been working on this piece. It's called Man with Book. And every book that I've read since 1992, I have written down, and I have a paragraph or two, a summary of that book. So I actually turn my reading into an artwork, Man with Book. Usually you'll always, of course my bag's up in a chair up there, but if you were to look at it right now, you'd find 2 books in there, maybe 3. And, I began, in surrealism, and surrealism, writing and painting were pretty close, so I've always had a respect for literature. It's always informed my art since day one, really. I mean, the first drawing I ever did was a classical Greek myth. The first drawing I remember doing, I was 7 years old, and I did a drawing of Prometheus. But it wasn't the victorious Prometheus handing the fire to mankind. It was after he'd been punished by the gods, and he was like chained to a rock, and this eagle was coming down and chomping on his liver, And later on, I realized, I was trying to say something about man and his purifying himself. But so literature, has informed my art since day one. Prometheus is literature, Greek myth.
Another question? In the back. Wait for the mic, please.
So many familiar faces, so many. That's great. Thank you for coming, people.
Okay, let's hear the question.
You mentioned that you both came out of UTSA and that the ecosystem didn't have the Blue Star, didn't have salmon, and so on. Could you talk a little bit about the community at SAC, the art community at SAC, of the teachers and the students and UTSA and so on? Because I remember...
And Trinity, too, right?
Yes, yeah. Trinity. And
well, I consider it a golden age of professors because we had Mel Casas, Frank Hine, Robert Tiemann, Philip John Evatt, just to name a few. I mean, it was wonderful. And also we were coming out of the psychedelic '60s, and Don was I would get the Eagle Bone Whistle that was published by Ples McNeil.
It was an underground
newspaper that ran,
Great.
and I would look at these drawings, and these drawings were fantastic, and there was signed Don Evans on there. And then I eventually met him. But back then, if you went to SAC, you were going to be a pop artist. I mean, everybody was a pop artist over there. And then if you went to Trinity, you were going to be an abstract painter or something. But it was a wonderful time. It was a wonderful time because not only did we take classes by these professors, we became friends with them. George and Don and I became real good friends with Ron Cohen and all the people, and people were, UTSA out at 1604, it was like so far away, and they thought it was racist and it was like this and that, and it was a terrible thing. Now look at it. I mean, it's all the way, everything's been built out there.
2 buildings out there at that time, something like that.
Yeah, but at Trinity, I mean, but then they've allowed the art department's kind of gone down, and other art departments. I'm certain that there are other great professors, but it was the golden age of professors in San Antonio at that time.
And Don, actually a question that I keep getting asked, so I'd like you to tell people, how did Don Evans become Donjon Evans?
Well, that comes a lot through literature, too. I mean, I'd be the first to tell you that my art is highly, highly, highly influenced by French art. To me, when I was a kid, modern art was almost synonymous with France.
So do you have a meaning behind Donjon?
Well, Donjon is the French word for dungeon because, I kind of feel like I'm a prisoner. So that's why I chose the name. My real name is Donald John Evans.
Right.
But I shortened it to Don John once I found out that was the word for dungeon in French. I went, hey, I've always felt like a prisoner on this planet,
And then you became
and
a
I try to free
hunchback.
myself through my art, So it just fit in, you know.
Any other questions from the audience?
There is an artist named Donald Evans also. He makes like little stamps. He makes, he's dead. So it's kind of he's a great artist. I like him, but it's kind of to separate a little bit from that too. You know,
Well-
I always would get you two confused.
Well, to kind of wrap things up here, it's been just a pleasure for me to have the experience to bring this to light, to help bring this to light. And I can't see what it says. What does it say there? Oh, yes. So I want to thank George and Donjon and Norman Rene.
Thank you so much for coming.
And of course,
we love
all
you
of you.
very
Thank
much.
you very
Thank
much.
you. Oh, thank you.
I love you, Felicia. Hey, and I want to give a big shout out to Mr. David Rubin because without his help, none of this could have been seen through to fruition. And I applaud you.
Thank you, David. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks again, everyone. Have a great evening.